Greetings.
Salutations.
I'm Adria.
I'm Andrea, and welcome to the Chronic Hustle.
Welcome.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm lovely.
Welcome back, everyone. We are in episode 3.
We are.
And today is for Adria.
Crohn's Day.
It's Crohn's Day.
Yes. So we're going to we're going to tell my story around Crohn's disease. And it'll be part 1 of 2 parts.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for that. And
what are the 2 parts?
So the first part, essentially, part number 1 is getting diagnosis.
Okay.
Or, just the life before things got even crazier for me. Mm-hmm. And part 2 will be more based in the traumatic experience I had with Crohn's that changed my life forever, but for the better. Okay. So it'll be kind of like it'll be like a milestone point, part 2.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. So before we do that, we have icebreakers, and we
icebreaker
a box this time.
It's so pretty.
So this way we can just pick.
Remember we were talking about our sound effect? I was kind of thinking it should be like icebreaker.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
Right?
Let's work on that. Let's get in the booth and let's work on that.
Okay. Are you picking?
Okay.
The claw. Into the bucket. Okay. Let's see.
Celebrity girl crushes.
Oh.
Go. Okay. You want to go first? Go first.
Okay. Rosario Dawson.
Period.
Love. You.
Oh, no, I have to go.
We can popcorn.
Rihanna.
Duh. In that leopard outfit.
Right.
Rihanna in the leopard outfit. Ruby Rose. Hello.
Ruby Rose. Yes.
From Orange is the New Black, and she's the new Batman or Batwoman.
Yes.
Ugh. Too much.
I just have one in my brain that you mentioned, and I hope I'm not.
Zoe
Kravitz? Yeah.
I love her tattoos.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's 4. What's one more? We named so many the other day.
I love that soccer player too.
I don't know her name.
Rapinoe.
Okay, yeah.
She's so
badass.
swagged out. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's kind of crazy. In a good way.
And
kind of
lit.
She don't care about what nobody thinks.
The pink hair.
I love that. And then
Oh, hold on. I didn't even mention this to you, and I should have thought of this the first time. Lupita.
Yes.
Good Lord.
There we go.
She's
6.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's stunning.
Yes.
Yes. And she's really good at what she does.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I did not see Us. Scary.
I think I'm going to recommend that you don't see it. It doesn't seem like it's your kind of jam. I'm going to keep it 1,000 with you.
Okay. I won't.
So, yeah. Okay. That was fun. I need to, write out my list because I feel like we named so many more the other day.
I know. I feel like I was ready for that answer.
You were.
I was like,
you were so ready.
Who? What spectrum are we talking about? Because
exactly. So I'm excited to do this from the box now.
We have this really sparkly box.
Just this random, and it's got random icebreakers in it that we get to choose from. So
yes.
Very cool. So we should get into it.
Okay.
Right?
Yes, I'm going to scoot my chair closer. All right.
So, just to be quite honest, we recorded this episode one time already. And you realize in telling a story, 14, 15 years worth of a story is you can't fit it into 30 minutes. And then you got to realize what's important, what's not important in a story.
I mean, they're important, but what can people relate to?
Really
what can people
take
understand?
Away. Yeah, and that's what we want to do. We want to give our perspectives, but we want you to be able to walk away with either encouragement or guidance or just inspiration for whatever it is you're going through. So I'm going to start, obviously, my childhood diagnosis.
Right.
Because I was diagnosed at the age of 12 with Crohn's disease. And we reviewed Crohn's in the first or second episode, but just to give you a refresher, especially if you're new, Crohn's disease is an autoimmune disease. It is essentially where the immune system attacks the digestive system. So it's an inflammatory bowel disorder. So I always describe it as arthritis in the gut. It's like the simplest way, if you know what, because a lot of people know what arthritis is. Imagine that like in your organs. So I have flare-ups. Yeah, and when I got my diagnosis, my symptoms were vastly different from what they are now. So before I got diagnosed, I had become symptomatic almost a year prior to my diagnosis. Like symptoms onset,
So like
almost a
sixth
year.
grade.
Before that, I was in the fifth grade when I
Yeah.
started getting symptoms, and then I got my diagnosis going into sixth grade, which was interesting
You're a
too.
child.
Yeah, you're a child. You don't. And at the time, my parents were getting a divorce, and so things were very high stress for everyone. And if you know anything about divorce, they do like it's categorized in like as like a death in the family.
Absolutely.
And so I became symptomatic really, really quickly after my parents separated. And my symptoms were just really abdominal pain, like really severe abdominal pain. I wasn't using the restroom or I was going too much. And I was fatigued. Like I was extremely tired.
Yeah.
And my dad has Crohn's disease. So when I started experiencing symptoms and when I finally started to voice them, because it wasn't immediately when I started to say something's wrong. It was like when it was starting to occur day after day after day. And I finally said something to my mom, who said something to my dad. And I remember talking to my dad on the phone. I lived with my mom at the time. And he would say like, oh, I think you have Crohn's disease. Like these are the exact same symptoms I had. And so on and so forth. So my mom finally took me to the doctor. And it took my mom a little bit of time to get me to the doctor. It wasn't like a rush. And I know my mom had her own experience with my dad, so I can't imagine her experience with me and just what she was feeling at that time. And I remember going to the doctor at Beaumont and my mom telling him my symptoms. And he checked my hand. He just checked my nail beds. And he could tell based off my nail beds that I had Crohn's. Like his guess was that I had it before we did any tests, any procedures.
Does it still show up now?
I don't know because I've never had a doctor since him say anything about it. And I wonder, was it the form of my nails? Because people with Crohn's typically develop something called early clubbing of the upper fingertips. And so, or if it was the darkening around my cuticle. So I forget which one it was, but I remember that very vividly. And then I finally got scoped, so they sent a camera down and up. I got a colonoscopy and an endoscopy, and what they found was that I had severe Crohn's, and that I literally was having symptoms from my esophagus into my stomach, into my intestines. Like I had ulcers in my esophagus, in my stomach, in my small intestine. I had ulcers pretty much everywhere except my colon. So where your small intestine meets your colon, which is a really big blessing. Because for those with like the sister illness, ulcerative colitis, which is largely affected in the colon, it's much more difficult to live life with your colon affected. So I'm really grateful. But when I woke up, my parents were there and my dad broke the news to me. And I remember like just never feeling the same after that day. Like never feeling like a child again. I never.
Did you go to therapy?
After that, no. And not for that. Like I remember my mom put us in therapy for the divorce. But when I got sick, I didn't have any intervention. I wasn't talking to anyone about it. I was just really going to school at home and just kind of surviving. And I went home with like 7 or 8 different medications. And my mom brought me a journal and she wrote down all the times, all the medicines that I would take, and she let me know like, this is you.
I feel like day one you should be in therapy with the parent too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we just got this diagnosis for our child.
Yeah, and I think at that time, like, there were so many crazy things going on at that time. Like, the divorce, and like it wasn't an easy separation. My brother was developing symptoms of bipolar. It was just chaos. It was
Yeah.
straight chaos on
Right.
top of me getting sick, on top of us all going to new schools and like having to get acquainted. So when I got sick, I was in 6th grade and I was leaving class. I was leaving class 3 times a day to take this medicine. Well, not three, probably twice a day. So once in the morning I had to leave class, and then before the day ended to take medicine in the office. And I'd come back to class and kids would be like, "Why do you have to leave?" Or but there was a girl in class who had like diabetes and she had to keep her blood sugar up and she would have snacks and no one would ask her anything. And I never knew how to explain my illness.
Yeah.
Like I used to tell people it was an autoimmune disease, and I remember people translating that into AIDS because AIDS. Like
Oh, yeah.
when you're young, you don't have an understanding of anything. Like people would turn around in class and be like, if I was talking about it at all, they would ask me, why don't I just get surgery for that? Wouldn't that just, these are just kids my age asking me this.
Yeah.
And it really,
Well, we live in like a instant gratification kind of world.
absolutely.
Like,
But what's so interesting is that thought would even come up in a 12-year-old or a
young-
13-year-old.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is like, how much have you been exposed to that you even know that surgery solves things? Like, I didn't even know. I thought I was avoiding surgery. Like, I thought the whole point, like, of me having Crohn's was to avoid surgery.
Yeah.
If you get surgery, that's bad. That's a bad sign.
Yeah.
So it just like, it was like my whole world was like warped in a way. And I felt very isolated, and I wasn't friendly. I wasn't really all that friendly. Like I was friendly in a sense, but I really wasn't. I wasn't like a gentle person. I became very like hardened by this experience I was having, and mostly because of the chronic pain, which nobody talks about. And I know that we say that so often about what people aren't talking about is like living every single day in pain. Like when you're laughing, the pain comes up. When you're eating, the pain comes up. When you're crying, the pain. When you're just sitting there watching TV, trying to just exist, like, and there's pain. And I know my mom did everything in her power. Like she got me into sports. Like I ran cross country because they were like, well, she has to stay active. She got me into cross stitching so I could be creative. Like I tried so many things, but the pain was just always there. Yeah. And as years went on, I was on and off medicine. So it's interesting. I was definitely in a house divided. My dad was very much so. My dad has been 30 years medication free. And when he first got diagnosed, he was very sick. But what we do know is that Crohn's disease and most illnesses dwell in men differently than they do women.
Absolutely.
We have hormonal aspects to us that affect.
Yeah.
So like when it's my cycle, my Crohn's is flaring.
Yeah.
There's no let up. There's no let up at all. So my dad was very much so like holistic. He was like, your mind is gonna heal you, and all these really lovely notions. But I didn't understand what that meant. Like you said, I wasn't in therapy. I wasn't even learning about what this was doing to my mind. I had no understanding of that. I was really sick. That's all that we did know. But my dad was feeding me that on top of me just wanting to be, I was becoming a teenager.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be normal. Like, I just
Totally.
didn't want to have to worry about taking pills, so I stopped. And nobody was regulating me. Nobody was making sure I took my medicine, so I stopped. And I suffered after I stopped. I suffered largely. And I remember the most, like, profound memory I have of my teenage years was when I was 16 during finals week, my junior year of high school. And I barely made it out of high school, y'all. Barely. I remember coming home and showering and my back like stinging and reaching back and feeling like my skin had been like, I don't even know the word for it. And I had developed shingles at 16. And I was put on medicine for that. My mom knew what it was, got me on medicine. I was kind of bedridden when I was 16 for a little while. And sick. Crohn's still flaring. Like, the immune system was just so compromised.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out, and then I'm getting my I'm getting my cycle around that time. I think I developed my menstrual cycle around, 12, 13. So it's a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so much at that age. And when I reflect back, I'm like, wow, to get to this point, I had to go through all that. It was extreme circumstances, but I look back and I'm just like, I would not be as resilient had I not, especially when you get it early on. Because the younger you are, the more resilient you are. That's just the thing. Like, babies fall and they get up. They don't keep track of who did them wrong. Like, you're just way more resilient. So that is the one thing I will say. As hard as it was, I felt like being young, I was more impressionable to navigating it in a way. Whereas like when you are an adult and you get a diagnosis, you kind of, your mind already works a certain way.
Oh my.
You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's like having to reprogram as an adult is way different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
not taking away from either one.
Absolutely.
You know?
And there's no way to take away from either one. They're two totally different experiences. And like, I'll never know what it's like to get a diagnosis as an adult and what that experience would be like.
Right.
I can't imagine. I hear of people with Crohn's getting diagnosed at 50, at 55, 70. I'm like, that's crazy. I can't imagine. I'm grateful that if this was for me, that I got it, that I knew early.
Right.
And it was a tough road. And I'm gonna lead us up to like basically when I graduated high school, because that was really me graduating high school was my first moments of like advocacy, and for myself. I never advocated like in the doctor's office. I did in some ways, but not in a way where I really like. I knew that I needed to do something. Like, I knew I needed to get out of high school. I knew I could not get held back at all. And I definitely knew that I was sick. And the only reason I wasn't performing well was because I was sick. I was literally in class next to people that could think. I couldn't even think. On top of the things going on at home, the abuse, all of the aspects to it, I couldn't think beyond my pain.
Right. Like someone explained it, like chronic pain being like a toothache, because everybody knows what it's like to have a toothache.
Right.
So can you imagine having a toothache and trying to just focus, trying to function
every day, all day,
all the time? It feels like this constant pounding. You have this headache, and so that can, for people who don't know what chronic pain is like. And I couldn't imagine being in high school with like a raging, pain like that. Yeah,
and then trying to perform academically. It just doesn't.
No, it doesn't work.
It doesn't make sense. And then on top of like trying to explain to people what's wrong.
And you look fine.
And you're
look pretty,
fine. Like,
you're young, you're youthful.
So many things. And I remember like there was one class that I really needed to pass in order to graduate. And I remember just going to the teacher and like begging her. That was my first moment that I ever asked for anything.
Yeah.
And she passed me, and my counselor was telling me not to apply to college, like no need to apply to university, apply to community college, start there. I didn't want to go to a community college. Like, I wasn't settled on that, and I also didn't believe her. So I wrote essays about my experience in high school and about my Crohn's. And girl, I wrote an essay, and I applied to every college you could ever think of, like every Columbia, Ohio State, U of M. I know, come back. Come back. Boo. Michigan State.
I forgot that you told me that.
Yeah, Michigan State.
How could you do that?
Right. Oakland University. I just applied. And I got rejection after rejection after rejection. And then one day Oakland University called me, and the head of admissions wanted to meet with me. And went up to Auburn Hills, and she sat me down, and she was just talking to me, and she was just reviewing like how I tested and my homework and all these things. And then she revealed to me that her sister had Crohn's. And it was a profound moment for me. It was a significant moment in that me telling my story literally, first of all, positioned me as not the only one because I felt very isolated.
Absolutely.
Even with my dad having it, he was symptom free. He wasn't, and he was telling me basically to like heal myself. And to me, that was very neglectful of like the true experience I was having. And so I didn't really have anyone.
And then it's almost like it's your fault.
Yeah, it's like
point.
you're
like,
responsible to make it better. And it's like, And so when she told me her sister had Crohn's and she understood how difficult it was to live with this illness, I felt seen for the very first time. I felt like, and then she admitted me in my first year of college was the first time I ever felt like independent of my Crohn's, even though I was still very ill. I just felt like, oh, I'm doing something with this.
Right.
You know, and like I had work jobs. Like I had my first job when I was 15. I was collecting carts at Kroger, sick as hell, like doing everything sick. Period. And I got into Oakland University, and that was amazing. And I went on to transfer to Wayne State.
There's a truck outside making noise.
Right, it's like pause, and it's like,
excuse us, sir. We are recording a podcast.
Exactly.
I need you to fix those brakes.
Right, put some WD-40 in
Come
the
on. Okay, come back.
I'm back. So, also leading up to that time, that was probably the sickest I had been, though. I transferred to Wayne State, and I had fallen very ill, but I had been living with the chronic pain now for about 6 years. And so they say it takes 6 to 10 years to master something. So I had mastered my pain. After 6 years, I could do anything in pain. I could hold a conversation in pain. I was personal training at that time. I was personal training people, and I was hurting. I was going to Wayne State, and I was hurting. And when we say hurting, I want people to understand that all I ever wanted was my bed and to lay down and to be asleep for a long time.
Yeah.
But it was getting up anyways, and I was working long hours for my dad, and I could tell my body was beginning to give out on me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was journaling significantly at that time because I just felt this wave of when you don't have your health, you lean on the intangibles in a large way. Like for me at least, just from my experience, at my sickest, I was my most spiritual. I was because I was just asking the universe and my creator for help.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know if I should go to the doctor, if I should do X, Y, and Z. I didn't know. So I was just journaling and like praying for the calm before the storm. And I finally gave in, and I went to see he was a retired MD, now practicing holistic medicine, but he prescribed me prednisone, which is a steroid that you get very early on in your diagnosis. And I remember taking it and knowing that it wasn't going to work the times that it did before. And he just hadn't examined me in the way that I thought I should have been. And this is where we'll kind of, I'm going to wrap it up kind of here, because at that time,
you leaving us with a whole cliffhanger.
Yeah, literally. I remember I had a bulge on my lower right abdomen. And I remember him examining me and him saying that he pressed around it, but he couldn't press it. And then he put me on prednisone and he sent me home. And I was taking the prednisone, and it was not, usually prednisone, if you're familiar with it, any kind of steroid really, it takes your symptoms away right away. It solves your symptoms right away.
Yeah.
And that was not happening. And I was 18 going on 19 at that time. No, I was 19 at that time. I was 19. And so, yeah, leading up to 19, so from 12 to 19, it was nothing but a roller coaster.
Yeah.
trying to be a teenager, trying to
Right.
find out who you are, trying to form relationships. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of significant friendships. Things of that nature. And those are things that we're going to be talking about
Absolutely.
on the podcast. And that's why I bring it up is like, and we talked about this last night, just about your disposition when you are ill and how others treat you and the relationships you're even able to form.
Yeah.
And I look back and I think of like, wow, what if I was able to form those bonds and X, Y, and Z, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. All of my significant relationships came in my adulthood after I got a profound understanding of my illness.
Yeah.
So that I could communicate with others and
Mm-hmm.
explain to them, what was going on with me and the power behind what was happening. Like one day you up, one day you down, and that's hard to explain. And so, yeah, and I know that in summary, essentially, is that early diagnosis, I had support, but I didn't have a lot of direction.
Yeah.
What should I do? Should I be on the meds? Should I not be on the meds? Should I be working out? Should I not be working out? All these things I found out when I got older of what I should do. And part 2 will be very significant because it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And changed everything. It changed the course of everything.
Yeah.
And it almost offered me a clean slate to decide what did I need to do. And I think it's also going to be really helpful for people with Crohn's who have had any surgeries or are considering surgery or are up for surgery. Just kind of the routes that you can take.
Yeah. It's always good to hear options.
Yeah.
People on the other side of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because like most surgeries are planned. Mine was not. So I'm excited for part 2. I feel like that's good. I feel like there's really no more for me to add, and basically like let you guys know what's happening next.
Yeah.
Which is your episode, Andrea.
Yeah. We're gonna get into EDS
And fibro.
and fibromyalgia.
Yeah, I'm really
Oh,
excited.
gosh. Yeah.
It's gonna be good. I'm really like grateful to be able to share our stories, and like through the pain just comes so much strength and resilience and
gosh.
gratitude.
Absolutely.
And if you don't take anything else from this episode, is that we are all enduring like different aspects of life, and this is just my story, but I know that so many people can relate to divorce, and so many people can relate to not being able to form friendships and not knowing, not having direction from your parents.
Yeah,
When you're
absolutely.
young. That's tough. And so if nothing else, like be encouraged.
Yeah.
And
There is a light at the end of the tunnel.
There is. And no matter how far away it is, it's like you got to hustle. You got to hustle to it.
Yeah,
You got to hustle to it. And so, with that being said, we're going to wrap it up for episode 3.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions regarding Crohn's disease, regarding part 1, you can email us at thechronichustle@gmail.com. You can follow me at Adria Moses on almost all platforms, and definitely Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you?
Me, Andrea Mahal, on all platforms. That's my handle.
There's a J in one of my names somewhere. I think it's Twitter. Whatever.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you gonna tell them my government name?
shit.
No, I'm just joking.
Oh.
Okay, so we're signing off, y'all. We appreciate you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Yes. Bye.